Mamu Presidente Me Mawaku, District President-elect Me Masenti, members of the Young Women's Manyano Executive, ki dumedise bagaichu President wa bomme o temo gare ga rona me Malekeka le executive ya gagwe, baruti ba ba leng teng mo gare ga rona le bao e leng di president. Ki le dumedisa bagaichu mo lineng la rara la morala mo boitshepo. Ki dumedise di delegates tsa convention, bone batho ba ba re neileng an opportunity to come and share with them in their program. And so I greet you all in the precious name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Dumelang bagaetsho. Molweni bandakwethu. Sanibonani. Ki kupilo go tlo presenter one of the contentious and controversial topics in the connection and in the local church. And I was reluctant, Mamua, to accept this invitation because this is not an easy task given the current state of our country, the church, and our families. To deal with issues of harassment, it will never be an easy thing, particularly standing in front of a group of beloved women as a man to come and talk about harassment. So it does not become an easy task for me. However, I thought to myself, I am called to do this, and so let me do what God has called me to do. I presume that delegates of this convention, Mamuaku, have had a view or have gone through this policy at some point. I would like to assume that. If it is not the case, it's okay. I will be taking them through the details and the nitty-gritties of the processes of the sexual harassment policy as it has been given to us by the Methodist Church of Southern Africa. But before I do that, it is important as a minister of the gospel that I lay the foundation for us. Because Bagaetsho, we are in the church. And being in the church, there should be a difference when I do a presentation for a corporate company or corporate group of people, and when I present to those who are proclaiming Christ as their Lord and Savior. And so I will take you through, if you can go to the next slide. I don't know who's going to be moving the slide for me. Oh, thank you very much. I will firstly look at what are the theological underpinnings of this policy. Why in the first place the Methodist Church thought to itself, but something that can guide them. Why do we even need a policy way in the church? Because in the church you would assume that it's supposed to be a safe space. So why do we need even the policy? I will look at the social context that informs why this policy exists. And of course, the inception of this policy when it was given to us by the church. Lastly, I will look at the implementation of the policy, which is something that we struggle with, and the gaps that exist that the church is busy trying to review them as we speak. So this will be really the four areas that I would like us to converse on. I am happy, Madam President, that I can be stopped at any time. If you are okay with that, well, I don't think I will lose the trail of my thought. But if you want me to take questions and comments at the end of the presentation, I'm also happy with that. It depends. At the end of the presentation. All right. The second thing is that I will be using at some point certain language that is not comfortable. Right. And so I am preparing us, those who are sensitive, I will use the language that it might, to a certain extent, make you feel uncomfortable. So those who are batho ba kholo ba leng teng ka kwano abantu abadala bakhoyo apha izawuthi xa ndithetha ke ezinye izinto andazi noba nizawuvala indlebe okanye nizawumamela. But please do not interpret me as a disrespectful minister. Just know that I'm trying to make a point so that we are all journeying together. The intention is not to reiterate what is in the policy. The intention is to interpret what is in the policy. Otherwise, I do not undermine people. You can read for yourself. So there is no point for me to be reading this to you. Hence, I am going to be using a language to a certain extent that is not comfortable, because we are going to be talking about sexual issues. We are going to be talking about different forms of harassment. And so, if we can just ready ourselves and prepare our minds. So the first thing, if you can go to the next slide. We are created in the image of God, all of us. And it is important to acknowledge that as God created us, God bestowed upon us, and God endured us with this divine authority that you and we possess. And it is this authority that is problematic. Because God said, I give you the authority to subdue the earth. So in other words, I give you the authority of dominion over other creatures. And so the problem we have, that we are struggling with at the moment, it is the struggle of power relations. It is the struggle of who is more powerful than the other. And then we prove that in different ways, from both emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually. We want to prove that I'm more powerful and who is less powerful than I. So as God's people being created in God's image, we do not forget that we resemble the following attributes. And it is important for us to take note of this. One, we have been created in love. We are the product of God's love, out of love, through love, and for love. And so lerato is one of the essential fundamentals that constitutes who we are as God's people. The second thing is that we are the people of care. We care. God created us so that we can care for each other. And God is a caring creator. So he gave us this authority so that we do not use it to abuse, but we use the authority to care. God gave us the authority not to exploit, but to empower. And that's where care comes in. And so within the existence of God and the mystery of our existence in relation to God as human beings, we are aware that God gave us this essential attribute called care. We are the people who exist to protect. That's why God said, subdue the earth. So God did not say subdue the earth so that you use the earth and everybody and everything that exists in it for your own benefit, but you use it to glorify me in what I've created. We are the people who have been created to preserve the sacredness of life. We are the people who have been created for peace in God's world. We are the people who resemble God's respect. And so, what happened? Why do we even need the policy when we embody the image of God? And then these things do not exist. Lerato le fedile bathong. Care does not exist. To protect one another, it's something else. Respecting of life, people do not respect life as we speak. It is worse even in the life of the church that the sacredness of life, it is something that we do no longer put at the center of what we do. Respect, it does not exist. And so we find ourselves in a space where we have to say, what could be the guiding policies? Because Motu does no longer live in accordance with the attributes of God. And so what could be the things that we can do to control this person, to ensure that this person comes back to the state where God wants them to be? What can be done to ensure that amongst us, the love of God is going to exist? What can be done to ensure that there's not going to be violence? What could be done as God's people to ensure that we are not going to find ourselves in a space where others are abusing others? And that's where the policy comes in. So if you can go to the next slide. We have been given this beloved commandment. Jesus said to the disciples, love one another as I have loved you. John 13 verse 34. And we struggle with that as human beings. The greatest test of our existence is to love those who do not love you. The greatest test of character is to love God's image. Regardless of the social status, economic status, political status, gender, and you name it. And that is the greatest test that Jesus gave to us. We exist as God's people for non-violence because God is not the God of violence. He's the God of love. He's the God of peace. We exist as God's people to ensure that justice prevails. Righteousness becomes the norm of the day. We exist as God's people to ensure that wherever we are, there is fairness, there is equality, there is equity. We exist as God's people to ensure that in everything that we do, we promote that which God has created us for. But unfortunately, because of the fall of humanity and God's way of trying to redeem us, we find ourselves continuously going back to our sinful life. Re wela sebeng. Re iphitlhela re le batho ba etsang dibe. Re iphitlhela re le batho ba etsang dintho tse against what God wants us to do. And where does that leave us? If you can go to the next slide. It leaves us in a state whereby our social trajectory has been so damaged to a point that human beings who are supposed to live with each other in love do not do that. And so, what does that mean for our existence? The first thing that I want to point out is that the gender stereotypes that we have, which has led the church to come to a point of having this sexual harassment policy, are things that when we deal with them, we need to understand that we deal with things that came or emanate from our early formational stages. What do I mean by that? So let me use men as an example, the thinking of men. When we deal with these issues and sexual harassment and everything, so those of you who normally get your inbox messages or your DMs, whether it's on Instagram, whether it's on WhatsApp, you know those messages that comes randomly. And this message, now this is the difference. There's a difference when somebody says something. Remember that when we grew up before technology, we did not have the privilege of inbox, right? So if in the and we are having our chat and we are engaging and we, and then a girl passes, and we're like, yo, manolo pakile man. Right? So that's the language. Now I don't know what does that mean in Xhosa. I don't know. I can't interpret that. All right? All right. So this is the language. Remember that our informal spaces are so powerful because that's where minds are shaped. Informal spaces, informal conversations are so powerful because that's where mentality is shaped. So when a guy sees a woman and say, hey, right? So remember, these are the olden days where we are formed. Nobody comes to me and say, but that's wrong. Nobody comes to me and say, but you cannot use that language. Right? And so I grow up with this language and it becomes what? Normal. It has been normalized by the society. I normalize it for myself. It becomes part of who I am. And so it becomes easy that I can use on inbox. All right? So that's the language. And okay. No, I won't go further. Lebaton, now you can hear me. All right. So then you wonder why different reactions to these things. In those days, it was not interpreted as harassment. Because nobody taught us what is harassment. So it became normal, and I grew up with it, and I normalized it. And now I am still stuck in my subconscious mind with the things that I have learned when I grew up. And so I come with these things because I have not been taught how to deconstruct and how to unlearn that behavior. Now I normalize these things. I do that to women. I send all these other things as men, right? So I'm trying to paint the picture of where do we come from and how can we as a church try to deal with all these things that we are struggling with. And then the second point is around the power relations. That we relate with each other on the basis of patriarchy. I'm a man, you are a woman, so I perceive myself because I live in a world of privilege, and therefore in this world that I live in, it gives me the authority over women. And those are perceptions that we grow up with. And how we relate with each other creates problems for the church. The question then comes, in the context of what I've said, if you can go to the next slide. Is the church a safe space for women? Is the church a safe space for children? Is the church a safe space for LGBTQI plus community? And I've excluded men intentionally. Is it a safe space? And I'm using an image so that we can get to where I am going. I'm using an image that comes from the book of Genesis chapter 7 verse 16. The Noah's Ark. And so God locked them together inside the ark. And this is the point. God put the natural animosities together, all opposites together, and hold them together in one place. The ugly, and we are in the church, right? Let us not have the image of the church that does not exist. The ugly are here. The beautiful are here. The whole are here. The broken are here. God locked us together in this ark called the church. And all of us are here. And when we're all of us here, something is bound to happen because God brought together the opposite animosities and bring them in the same ark. And that's what the church is all about. In the church, you will see the broken, you will see the whole, you will see the ugly, you will see the beautiful, you will see the wounded, you will see the healed, you will see those who are still in the process of healing. You will see those who are still exercising and experiencing their childhood trauma. They are all here. And these things, they lead us to spaces where we are not safe. And when we are not safe, how do we protect each other? So somebody can say, but we are supposed to be a community where we exist in a safe net. But unfortunately, the safe net does not exist. And when the safe net does not exist, the church, in its authority, being given by God as a divine community, it has to sit down and think and say, how do we protect the vulnerable? How do we protect those who are still growing? How do we protect those who are disadvantaged in the society? How do we protect those who are seen and taken advantage of? How do we protect women from the early misconceptions of men? When they see women, they see them as sex objects. How do we protect women from that? So this is the church sitting together and say, we cannot exist in a space where a community that's supposedly to be a community, where they exist in safe net, and the safe net does not exist. So let's create it for them. And that's where we then get the sexual harassment policy. Because the church is saying, well, if they cannot protect each other, we need to enforce protection. We need to enforce that they are going to live within certain laws and regulations in order for them to protect one another. And so what are the objectives of the sexual harassment policy? The first one is to eliminate sexual harassment, and let's move on, or any form of harassment. Not only sexual harassment. So there are different forms in which people are harassed in the church. But in the moment, we can only focus on what? Sexual harassment. And I want to emphasize the latter part, because we are living in the era where this is so prevalent than anywhere else. People are harassed on social media. People are harassed in church spaces, church meetings, church gatherings. People are harassed in worshiping spaces. And so it is not only sexual harassment that we need to be focusing on, but we need to hold these two in tension, that there is sexual harassment and there are other forms of harassment. And so the church is saying we are aware that they are not only struggling with their sexual lust and they do not have any mechanism of controlling it, but there are other forms of harassment that exist as well. So the second objective that the church then gives to us is to create a conducive environment, one for church employees, those who come from circuits and societies where you have employees, where there is a gardener, domestic worker, or a receptionist, or a PA kamfundisi, anyone who has been employed by the church. Worshippers, that's you and I. When we meet, whenever we worship, leaders, all forms of leaders that you can think of, those who are volunteers in the church, visitors are protected by this, not only Methodist members, but even visitors. So if I happen to visit your occasion and I feel that I was intimidated, I was harassed, and all of that. Ministers, yes, Liberuti, they do get harassed, right? Evangelists, preachers, and seminarians. And of course, the list is long. And so these are different groups that you meet in the church. And when these groups meet in the church, have the image of the ark of God, you bring them together. Some here are still struggling. Some here are abusers. Some here are violent people. They are violent in language, not only in physically, just in language. Just the language that they use. When somebody speaks, it's like a sword coming out of their mouth. It cuts across your heart. And you spend 3 days sleeping at home just because of what a person has said to you. Right? And so it is important that we note that when this group of people gather, language is bound to be used, actions are bound to happen, interaction will happen. And when that happens, when my woundedness that I come with from my early stages, or when my childhood traumas are triggered in such a space called the church, and I find myself projecting that which I am struggling with inside, and I find myself harassing these people who are gathered here today, the church is saying we need to protect them. And so you can find it from the employees, it can be the other way around. You can find it from the worshippers, you can find it from the leaders, you can find it from the volunteers, visitors, ministers, evangelists, preachers, and seminarians, and the list goes on. So we need to create a conducive environment for these people when they gather. And how do we do that? Where do we even start? Then the church says, but we can create for them this what we call sexual harassment policy. And what constitutes sexual harassment policy? What constitutes it? What makes it to be that document that can help us? So the definition of it, the church gives it to us, and it says sexual harassment begins with behavior that is unwelcome. Now, here a personal decision has to be taken. Are you the type of a person who accepts jokes? Right? There are those people who must, jokes like, "Hi man, compliment, alright, wena man, omega, There are people who don't take that light. So you're not even supposed to utter that. They've got clear reservations, clear boundaries. That's not the language that is acceptable. There are those who still need to be helped to understand what does that mean. So for somebody to decide what is an unwelcoming behavior, that will certainly be based on you as a person, your principles, your values, the boundaries that you have set for yourself. I'm not going to dictate what is unwelcome to you. You do that for yourself, depending on your character. Right? You get those things at Aweni, and we see that a lot. When a person would come, and then they will just pat you on your bums. Right? And then abanye ke kanba jonga because one was right? And so there are times where I just wear my all-star and I'm just this casual guy, and some people don't know that ngumfundisi because all right. And so when you see these things, and some people will be laughing, and somebody giggles when that happens. And then you sit and wonder, what does it mean for you? Do you feel violated? And who decides when you have been violated? You decide. So personally offensive, and that is directed against the person because of his or her sex. So that's what sexual harassment is. Some people, and I'm going to get into some of the statements that are uttered mainly, which could actually help us. So secondly, harassment may include the following types of behavior. The threats. People are threatened in the church. I wish the church can do something. I wish we can understand the implementation of this. People are threatened on daily basis in the church. They run to where? To WhatsApp statuses. They run to Facebook. They run to all these other social media places. All right? And people are threatened all the time. People are intimidated all the time. There's verbal abuse that exists in our meetings, in our worshiping spaces. So unwelcome remarks or jokes about a person's ancestry, nationality, or ethnic groups. And that we get a lot in our church spaces, right? Because we gather from different cultural groups. And so we make fun of either the Nguni speaking people, we make fun of either the Tswana or Sotho speaking people, and people make this normal as if it's okay. We have normalized some of these things. And so the church is saying, be aware that the minute you're starting to border in that line, you are likely to offend people for who they are. So when somebody begins to talk about your origins, where you come from, your race, your ethnic or tribal group, your color, perceived race, or religion, or disability for that matter, your gender. So these are some of the characteristics that we look into and say, but people are being treated in such a way that dehumanizes them. And that's the point. That when things are said that makes you to feel like I'm no longer human, then something must be done. It can be about your marital status. People can make jokes about that. It can be about your family status. It can be about your social status. It can be about your sex, your age. Did you know that actually you can lay a complaint for somebody who klekisa ngomtshato wakho or kanye ukuhlekisa ngefamily yakho and dehumanize you? Displaying, now here's the point. Displaying or circulating. Displaying or circulating. It was interesting, and I think some of you are present here. And Mamu President, let me just press harder on this one. You will never become a hero when things are said by people on Facebook and you go and comment. You will never become a hero. Trust me. If you think that I'm in a safe space on social media, people's names can be dragged in the mud. people's names can be dehumanized. Hayi, Facebook wam lo. Akangeni ndawo bani. If you are that person seated here today, please be aware that does not make you a hero at all. In actual fact, it's a violation of other people's existence and rights. And we see that it is so prevalent in the Methodist Church of Southern Africa lately. Lately, people think that they can become heroes on Facebook and drag people's names. So displaying refers to you, whether you're going to put a poster and make fun of it. People are creative, right? We are creative human beings. Whether it's circulating sexist texts about people, or offensive pictures or posters, or writing jokes about them and being indirect, all these things that we do, somebody can just pick that up and say, I know that you are talking to me. I want this to be tested in the tribunals of the church. And it can be tested. So unnecessary physical contact, such as touching, I've mentioned that, petting, pinching or punching, physical assault, we see this in the church. Now when it happens, people do not know what to do. They do not know where to go. So the types of harassments that the church looks at. 2 types of harassments. A quid pro quo type harassment, and this means where sexual favors are expected or requested from or offered in exchange for some benefit. Let me deal with that. Ndizakwenza usihlalo. Ndimisango ozawungena ngalo. I will do this to you. I will make you this. I want you to do this for me. So there's always the end goal. The end goal is I must benefit. And in order for me to benefit, again, remember I spoke about power relations, right? Because I'm in a position of power and authority. Then it has to happen that Maga plan Muruti. And when that does not happen, tensions emanate, conflict comes in, siyaxabana, and what comes next? Something must be done between the two of us. And so it is important that we acknowledge that even discrimination itself, when people are discriminated for who they are, and I was intentional to talk about the 3 different groups, and that is women, children, and LGBTQI+ community. Because in the Methodist Church, we still are such a discriminatory space. People feel that I am here, but actually I do not belong here. But because I have to be here, I will come. But actually, I do not belong here. And people are discriminated all the time. So when the church says to you, you have offered something to somebody, you want this person to be this, and we see that your moves have become such an unwelcoming move towards this person because you wanted either to go to bed with them before you can help them to be whatever that they want to be in the church, because the church is such an exploitative space, such a vulnerable space. So this kind of conduct generally involves a person in a position of authority. Now the question is, can ministers find themselves on the other side? Not being the ones who are being harassed, or no, not being the ones who are harassing, but being harassed. Of course it can happen, and it does happen. We see it a lot with our female ministers. We see it a lot with male ministers, by the way. Now the question is how? How? We live in the culture We live in the culture. And this is some of the things that we are not talking about. The culture of casual relationships, right? Masibonelelane, sincedane, dihlangabeze ndikuhlangabeze. That's the society we are in. And because this behavior has been normalized, the church is saying, we're losing the sanity of who we are. Let's protect each other from such things. And that's why they have categorized that as a sexual harassment. Maintaining and condoning or contributing to an offensive work environment, which may include, but is not limited to, a variety of unwelcome behavior, which are listed in the next slide. Masiyeke. Unusual and overly friendly attention. Now, so, in the olden days, we know that you firstly become what? Friendly. Yes, you firstly become what? Not friendly, I become nice and you know what I'm talking about. Ninga ngathi aniyazi bethunana niyazi. Kutheni ngoku ngathi ndithethe into entsha? Nibe niyazi inyani. All right. So it begins with that. And then because sometimes we are kind people and we are in the church, and the church, remember that the church clothed itself in this glamorous glory of love, welcoming, kindness, mercy, So it's not easy to be suspicious of a person when you're in the church. You can be somewhere else, but in the church you're like, hayi man singabazalwane apha. Akazuqala ke abe siqala singabazalwane iqala ngobuzalwane lento. Sithi sibona man, this person is overly becoming friendly. Over-friendly bakhe boyakrogrisa. And that's where you begin to come to your own senses of saying, I am being led into a danger here. So these are some of the things that you look into, including such things as gifts. Right? So things as gifts, frequent social telephone calls. So ngizakuphathela is awundazi and azange sathetha sathini vele ndithi hayi phatha man. Why? Nje ndiyakuthanda ne? Nje. And then the next moment, and then these gifts is yakhula man aziyeki. It was not a once off thing, and it's growing and ilandele nge e-wallet. Phumi e-wallet kulandele enye into, and then it leads to something else. So we are mindful and say, you have to decide that which you can create a boundary on and say, well, I do not accept gifts from strangers. That's your own decision to take. Or I do accept them. Let us private visits. Kutenuza funuza kwam. Tato manyano ke wemandodana. Dicela ufika. Cela ufika ngentambama. Niyahleka because niyazifumana ezi messages. Cela ufika ngentambama. Mandize wethu man. So those are private visits. Asikho thina ndithi nivumelana nobabini. Omnyathi zange walibeka kwam sukuza. Ungezi nawe angezi. But the person persists and say, no man, I want to pay you a visit and, all these things. Repeated and prolonged staring. We're talking about or persistent shadowing or following the person. This person is constantly following me, whether it's on social media, because it's very easy to see, right? And so this creates a sense of consciousness. Be aware of the things that can lead you into a space where you are in an environment of being harassed. And when that happens, you need to know where it started and how it started. Sexual talk, innuendo, dirty jokes, offensive gestures, You know, these are things that happens in church spaces. Sexual or intrusive questions about the individual's personal life. Ndifuna uyazi. Ubophume nabani izola, hayi man, zange ndakubona unomntu. Zange ndakubona. Ukhona wethu. Now, good evening, you know. Kuko no hi and all these other things. Use of familiarities and diminutives such as honey. Baqala kanjalo abanye ndithi kweza inbox. Hi babes. Right? Now ke uveze emoji. Kuthiwa hi babes uveze emoji encumileyo. Hi dear. Right? And so it is so interesting that when the church looks at these things, the church then says, be aware of the things that dehumanizes you. Be aware of the things that intrude on your personal space. Be aware of the things that invades your privacy as a person. And when you feel that these things have been, they are happening to me, you can stand up and say, akaloku kuseni sewuqala awundazange wanibona sewuqala ngo baby sewuqala ngo honey sewuqala ngo dear and etc. You know the list is long. And then we can do something about this. Whistling, catcalls, leering, unsolicited and unwelcome flirtations, romantic gestures and advances. It is only you who can really come to a conclusion and say, what are some of these languages that I am not going to fall into and I'm not going to accept them? Some of the languages and the mannerisms that are used, graphic, degrading, excessive or unwelcome comments about another. So there's in the bendisteta umtu esithi kuwe hayi upakile umeka kuhle and all of that, right? Those are some of the graphic things. Today we are able to categorize it as an harassment. It was not then, I've mentioned that. But today, when somebody says that to you, you need to think twice. Again, you make your own decision. Kaloku abanye wethu, it's a compliment kubo. So you need to come to a place of saying, is this something that violates who I am? And if it does, I'm going to take the next step. Individuals' appearance, dress, or anatomy. So people can be mocked, people can be scorned for how they appear and how they present themselves, and they are degraded and they are dehumanized, and we laugh at them. We say all sorts of things about people. Because the church is about preserving the dignity of others, we take that seriously. Display of sexually suggestive objects or pictures. Yo. And now, so some people do this, and we see that whether it's on Instagram, whether it's on social media, and. But when you begin to do that about others, please be aware that you might find yourself in danger. So, lento basithandu post abantu, and sihlekise ngabo and do all these other things about them. Be aware that it might lead you in danger. Okay, let me move through all of these things. So these are some of the things. You can go to the not the last one. These are some of the things that when you look at them, they constitute what is called harassment. And I'm not going to go through all of these things, whether it's kissing, unacceptable touching, unacceptable hugging. Ihagas fanumus. Yes. No, if a hug is fun. All right. So we need to be aware of these things. If ndihleli mnakula harassment disciplinary hearing, ndizawubuza uhage njani? Then you'll tell me, amfundisi undihage wandithi kakuhle, there is a distance between us, but la hag mfundisi, it was too contacting. It was too close. You know, so these are things that we look at them and say, well, it was unacceptable to the person, they felt offended, you violated their space, and they have decided to lay a complaint against you. Verbal or emotional manipulation and control. Have we ever thought of that as harassment? How do we even measure that? Verbal, emotional manipulation and control. Exposing genitalia, physical or sexual assault, sexual intercourse, or rape. That is not consent. Okay, victimization. Now we come to a point of saying in the church people are victimized. You can be victimized to stand for the truth. You can be victimized to stand for what is right. You can be victimized to stay in your line. You can be victimized for all sorts of other things. The minute you start thinking and feeling that I have been victimized as a person, the church says to you, you have a right to go and check with the harassment team, which I'm going to talk about lately. And that harassment team will help you to assess your case and to test how things have been for you. I've been given an hour, so I must wrap up. For the purposes of this policy, retaliation against an individual for having invoked this policy. So when somebody says to you, I have laid a complaint, or you get to know that someone has laid a complaint against you, number one. Two, those who are involved in the harassment team, they are protected by the policy itself, because you can come and victimize such people and say, Lona undenza into ethile, ufunu undenzela ityala ecaweni, ufunu umosha isidima sami, and so the person feels that they have been victimized. It can either be the one who is an accuser, or the person who lays a complaint, who says, well, I've laid a complaint, and for me to lay a complaint has led me that a group of people now all of a sudden have victimized me in the church because I've laid a complaint about a person. For having participated in the investigative process or for associating with a person who has invoked this process will be treated as harassment. So if you happen, for whatever reason, you hear that somebody, your friend, for an example, has laid a complaint against someone, and nepeto zakhe zive nazo okokuba uvele wayo lay complaint wafaka ityala ngechomi yethu ucima ngubani yena sizambonisa. That on its own is going to lead you that you can be found to be in the wrong of this policy, so that it will be interpreted as harassment. False accusations. Abanye ke abantu, and this is, we need to be careful. Abanye abantu, we have made an example of many things here. Abanye abantu ke umntu uzawudibana naye otla utlwa motho are hayi unantshwere adira eng. The church will have to test that. So let us not think that for you to come and just say ungithumelele messages ezithi, they are going to be assessed, they are going to be screened, and they will be tested. Why? Because there will always be false accusations. And we have to protect everybody. So you will be protected, but the person that you're accusing will be protected as well. Because the church is aware that there can be false claims, there can be false accusations. Things can be said that are wrong about people. You can accuse them wrongly and say they are manipulating me, they are controlling me, they have sexually abused me, and all of that. The church will have to test all of those things. So it is not going to be a walk in the park when you lay a complaint and begin to think that because I think this person has done this, it is going to be easily accepted. Please be aware that it will be highly interrogated and investigated by the church. So, who does the work of sexual harassment? Listening to the cases of sexual harassment. The first thing is that the church, each circuit, and I don't know in your circuits, each circuit executive in the connection as well as the MCO shall establish within immediate effect a three-member sexual harassment team. And this comprises of people who are either having an experience of being psychologists, social workers, nurses, or lawyers, but somebody who has a broader experience and expertise of working with people who have dealt with more or less cases of this nature. So one member of the team shall be a person from outside of the circuit, and then the other two members will be from the circuit. Let's take note of that. Those who are circuit stewards who are seated here today, I hope your circuits have circuit harassment teams. If not, please go and establish one. So if it does not exist, it is an expectation of conference that they must have one. So the members of this team, they shall be screened because it's our and detail that we are in the Ark of Noah, right? So whether ufake ikola, whether uli police, whether uli John, whether whatever the profession you come from, you will be screened in terms of the Child Protection Act. You will be screened to ensure that you do not have any criminal record because you're going to be dealing with sensitive cases and vulnerable people. You're going to deal with people who are so in a space where they can easily be exploited. And so we need to make sure that you are the safe person to deal with those people. So when you choose people, you don't just choose. That's the first thing. You choose people with certain skills and expertise. Secondly, you have to ensure that these people have been screened. They must have what we call police clearance. If they do not have the police clearance, then they do not deserve to be there. Let me repeat myself. If they do not have the police clearance, they do not deserve to be in that team. Because they are going to deal with cases of children, they are going to deal with cases of abused women, they are going to be dealing with all forms of harassment. So you cannot take a person that you don't know. What is their background? And then in that team. Make sure that they are clean. Make sure that they do not have anything against them as far as the law is concerned. Is that clear? Okay. So the team is appointed annually and may be reappointed annually by the second quarterly meeting. Second quarterly meeting appoints this team. And so on quarterly basis, at the end of the year, we need to make sure that in the agenda items, we have what we call a sexual harassment team to help us deal with these matters. Superintendents are expected to report to the bishop on these issues. How do we then process the complaint? Person experiencing the harassment within the MCSA are urged to report the harassment to the anti-harassment team, the team that I've just spoken about. You can begin with a pastoral intervention by going to a minister, but if you feel that this is an harassment, the law says, or the policy says, your first point of call is to go to the anti-harassment team. Okay. Abanye ke niqala komagosa, niqala ko befundisi, niqala ko bakhokheli, and you start everywhere else. And I can understand in context or circuits where the team does not exist, but it is highly recommended. Actually, it is a regulation, it must be implemented, that you have the team in your circuit. So you go to those persons. It can be done in person, or it can be done in writing. So in other words, you can make an appointment with one of the members and say, I would like to see you, I want to report my case, and then you do that confidentially. They have signed a confidentiality form, and so they understand that whatever you have shared with them will have to be kept in that space. They are not supposed to share it. If they do, then they have violated the law. So you write to them, or you meet with them in person, and then that will be taken up with the team, and you will be called for listening, you'll be called to engage, you'll be called to be assessed, and whenever they feel that whatever the case is, it warrants a complaint, they can at the same time lay a complaint on your behalf. So the anti-harassment team can do that for you. They can lay a complaint on your behalf if you feel that I'm too vulnerable, I don't want to do it myself. They can lay a complaint through the DDR for you or on your behalf. So what they can do, again, the complainant may be accompanied by a person in supportive role who may remain with the complainant throughout the process if needed. So a person whom you can choose as your supporter can journey with you through that process, or it can either be one of the members of the team. They are allowed to perform that pastoral role as well, to journey with people, to accompany them throughout the journey of their the complaint. So the informal procedure, where a person might reasonably be unaware that his or her comments or actions are unwelcome, the complainant may first make known to the other person that such comments and conduct are unwelcome and ask that they cease to do that. So the first thing that you need today to see, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. All right? So you then find yourself in a space where you say, I've stopped you. I've told you that I don't like this. I don't like this. There are boundaries. You have violated my boundaries. You have violated who I am. And so please stop it. So then the person can be told informally that please stop to do what you are doing. If somebody has abused you verbally, you can report that. They can be told, please stop abusing people verbally. If somebody has emotionally or manipulated you and you feel that you have been exploited in whatever form, you can go and report and they informally be told that please stop what you are doing and the next party does not take it right. And then there will obviously be a facilitated assistance. It will not always be possible for the offended person to directly confront the perpetrator. We know that. It's not easy. So often because of power dynamics. So in such a case, consultation with another member of the MCSA may be helpful in facilitating a resolution. So it's always good to find someone to accompany you if you want to confront the person that have done something wrong to you, so that you know you are protected, you are safe, and you have somebody who really journeyed with you and accompanied you in the process. If such a person should agree to act, they should do so as impartial third party and assist the complainant and respondent to explore the resolution of the conflict. So the intention here is to firstly seek resolution before a legal formal process can be embarked on. We seek a resolution and say, can we resolve this? You didn't take right whatever that you received on your phone or whatever pictures were requested from you, whatever the language that was used, you did not like how you were treated in the worship space, you were bullied by Igosa, you were bullied by Umfundisi, you didn't like that, and so can we find a resolution? So we start there first before we can escalate it into a formal process. So facilitators cannot and should not promise complete confidentiality in matters that they constitute as harassment. So I've spoken about the next slide. Let me go to the criminal and civil charges. So a victim of sexual harassment has the right to press separate criminal charges. So some people have been asking this question a lot when we deal with gender-based violence sessions at district level. Mfundisi, in the event where this thing happens to me in the church always say, you do not take matters of the church to court. Right? So there's always this statement uttered all the time, as if we are saying, no, you cannot. Now, the policy is very clear. If you feel strongly that I have been sexually violated, you have the right to lay a criminal charge. So this thing of saying, no, it cannot go to court first, maske si qume apha ekhaya, sike si lungisa apha ekhaya, you know, si bonelele, si tini, right? I will always approach from grace, from love, and all these other things that I've mentioned. But if you feel strongly that you want to take a legal process, the church says it's okay. It's there, written black and white. You can do it. So nobody is limited at any given moment by this policy to act if you feel that the church has been so unjust in many ways. I've reported and nothing has happened, and now it's for me to go into the tribunals of the land. So personal support, you'll get support if you are a victim of harassment or any form of harassment. If you feel that you need emotional support, pastoral care, you need somebody to journey with you, the church is always in a space where it can journey with people. The last slide. If these supports are not easily identified through discussion with Human Resource Department or the minister, you may ask, if it's me who is involved, you ask somebody else. If it is someone else involved in your circuit, in your space, you are always welcome. Hence, we have an outsider in the team, somebody who is not part of your circuit, where you feel that, no, it won't go anywhere. So you can always go to the outside person. But those people have the responsibility to offer you support, care, and love. So in cases of serious sexual harassment, where a person on medical advice requires trauma counseling, but where his or her existing sick leave entitlement has been exhausted due consideration will be given to the granting of additional sick leave. So this is when the church really is beginning to journey with you, to support you, to care for you, and to ensure that you preserve and we preserve your human dignity. Thank you. Thank you, President. Over to you.
Thank you, Mfundisi, for outlining the harassment policy. I will then now open for questions or comments so that Mfundisi can respond before he leaves. Any questions around the policy? I see a hand there. I see a hand that side. Two hands so far. Sisi there. The third one here. Oh, okay.
Dibulele umfundisi, Jabagala. I'm hoping my comment will not be recorded, Ma'am President.
All right, so if a person feels that they do not want to be recorded, we can just cut it.
Thank you so much.
Stop recording. And Ma'am President, since she's making this statement that she doesn't want to be recorded, I would urge that even members seated here, they are mindful of that. That whatever that is said now